We met up in Fife in mid-June for a gravel ride which was being led by Peter Davies, one of our regulars who had put it together pretty recently. Peter had planned a 42-mile clockwise circular loop out of Cooper, and as always, more on the final numbers later. We had a large group with 21 gravellers turning up in a day. I discussed this with Chris about the difficulty in getting everyone round and the increased likelihood of falls or mechanicals, and unfortunately my concerns would later prove to have foundation. The question is, were they prophetic or had I just Jonah'd the ride?
Absolutely. I could be a challenge getting everybody in. There's obviously more chance of mechanicals, more chance of issues, potential offs. We shall see, we'll keep our fingers crossed.
If you're enjoying this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. If you'd like to try out any of these routes, you can download the GPX files by following me on Strava at Douglas Gilligan, RACC, or on Komoot at Specialised Doug. These are the ruins of Crawford Priy, a Gothic castle which sits about 3 miles southwest of Cooper. It must have been a very impressive building in its day, but it's been in decline for over 150 years now. Its grounds are said to be haunted by an apparition of Lady Mary Crawford who died there in 1833. We didn't see her though. This was the route for the day. It was basically a clockwise loop out of Cooper, and it was looking like we had a good day for it weather-wise. John then had the mechanical, with his rear brakes binding on, and he had to remove the pads. Gonzo helped to sort the issue, and it wasn't too long before we were back on the move again. I love these poppies here on the edges of the fields. They were such a vibrant red colour, and the footage really doesn't do them justice. I try to give as much notice as possible for these rides, but also try to pick the best day of the weekend weather-wise. It worked out well for this one, and we only had to avoid the puddles from the previous few days' heavy rain. And saying that, I think we were due one after the soaking we got at the end of the Aberfoyle 6 Lochs ride. You could see in the distance here the hill we were heading towards, which looked pretty ominous.
This is the main climb of the day. I stopped. I started with to take my jacket off. I'm pleased that I did. I'm cooking. So, in there, making progress. I think there's one more behind me, mate. Thank you.
This was the start of the main climb of the day, which is a single track tarmac road with passing places. This section probably lasted for a couple of miles and averaged out at about 10%. After the road section we cut off onto a grass path and rode through a small patch of woods. This opened out into a pretty rocky and steep climb which led up to the car park. Peter told me that he holds the KOM for the descent off the very top of the hill, which looked pretty naughty. As you can see, it was pretty windy when we crested the climb and set off along the plateau section. This track was really rocky and bumpy and made for an interesting wee technical descent. The path was also rather steep and the camera always tends to flatten the gradients. It also contained a number of diagonally installed drainage channels which had to be negotiated.
You've done that before.
Unfortunately for Dell, his wheel got caught in the last one and it brought him down. Thankfully, apart from a wee scrape and a blow to his shoulder, the big chap wasn't hurt.
Oh, Jesus! You alright? There's always one. I tell you what's going to make great foods, Del. You alright, big man? Aye. Jesus. I'm fine. Your things are into crash mode probably. Oh, you've no brakes. Or one brake.
Oh, one break. Aye.
You alright, Del? Aye, you didn't hit your heater end, did you?
I'm away.
That's alright, it's alright.
That's fucking brilliant.
You look like a tattoo. Try a tribal marking.
Why do you stay so long?
We then skirted the Barlow Reservoir before cycling between it and the Harper Lees Reservoir. The water levels were looking pretty low, but the puddles were making up for it.
You come yesterday, stay with me all night long.
As we cycled along the side of the reservoir, I then rode into a Dr. Foster style puddle, which really gave me a bit of a jolt.
Whoa.
We then had to pick our way through what Peter called the Bog of Eternal stench. This was pretty tricky and I ended up having a wee off myself when my wheel got stuck in a bit of a hole, but thankfully I had a nice soft landing too. I'm pretty sure I wasn't alone in coming off in the bog, but didn't get any footage of any other offs. Again, this was a challenging but enjoyable section.
Is winding low. I'm so lonesome I could cry. I've never seen a night so long.
We left the bog and onto a nice rolly gravel path which wound through the hills and contained a couple of wee drop-offs.
The moon just went behind a cloud to hide its face and cry.
Peter then showed me the John Knox Pullpit Waterfall. This was a secret meeting place which was used by Presbyterian Covenanters in the 17th century, although there is no evidence that John Knox actually preached there. I cycled on ahead, got the drone up and filmed some footage of the pulpit and waterfall before adjusting to catch a group descending the track, which was quite steep and technical.
Did you ever
If anyone's considering following this route, it's worth considering that there are some pretty gnarly sections on it, although if necessary they would all be hike-a-bikeable.
turn round and die? Like me, he's lost the will to live.
On that note, not only was Lucas joining us for the first time, it was also his first ever gravel ride, so this was a rather rude introduction to it.
You guys are nuts.
Blame Peter. You're just following, I don't even know where we're going. It's good fun though, isn't it?
It is different, isn't it? Fun, different. But I'm not coming back.
I'm so lonesome I could cry.
The terrain was constantly changing, with short road sections, grassy fields, single track, double track, wooded areas and parkland type sections where we were dodging the gorse bushes. It was also great to meet up with so many new gravel enthusiasts. Around half of the team on the day were new to our group, and thanks to everyone who turned up on the day to help to make it so memorable. We then had an excellent fairly long descent on a lovely single track road into Nubra, where we stopped for a bite to eat and a pint, although not necessarily in that order. Nubra is a pretty wee place about 31 miles into this ride, and I think by this point everyone was ready for a short spell off the saddle and a bit of nosebag. Fed and watered, we set off out of Nubra on the road, and you guessed it, straight into a 2 mile long climb, which took us up and past Lindoris Loch.
Just hope we're not going up there that hill, George. I don't want to. We're doing it.
The hill got the legs working again, and we had a few miles on the road before our next pretty woodland gravel section. We turned off the road here into the trees, and most of us found ourselves in the wrong gear. We were all pretty close together, and Bill had a real comedy fall.
Oh no, you're right, Bill. Oh Jesus. I'm like that.
Once I knew that he did a nice soft landing, I couldn't help but laugh. That was a beauty, Bill.
I think the turns could be better signposted. That was a beauty, Bill. I did.
Robert hasn't had the best of times recently. He explained that a couple of his fingers had come off second best in an encounter with a lawnmower blade recently, and they were still recovering. He also told me that he had broken his collarbone a couple of years ago, had had it plated and pinned, and it was the same side that he had damaged here. We were debating on how to make up a sling for Robert's arm when Gonzo came up with the idea of using an inner tube. Genius, big man, you fixed it again. We only had a few miles to go at this point, but Bill volunteered to walk back to the road with Robert, and Stuart went back to collect him with his van. Thanks for that, lads. The initial prognosis was that Robert had broken his collarbone again, but he found out the next day that thankfully that wasn't the case.
We made it! Well done, everybody!
We had a great day, an eventful one, but it was great fun. Thanks to Peter for planning the route, which had a bit of everything. Tough climbs, challenging descents, and some pretty technical terrain. We made it back to the car park, and after a couple of wee additions to the route, we discovered that, the ride by the numbers, we covered 47 miles with 3,100 feet of climbing. Thanks for watching, it's most appreciated.